Bourgeoisie produces, above all, art zone. Gravediggers.
Hey everyone.
Hi guys.
I'm recording from Toronto and it's Amr.
And I'm Erin and welcome to Das Criminal Podcast. Before we jump into it, we just want to note that we're sending love and solidarity to Beirut. You guys probably know there was a big explosion there this week. You can donate to the Lebanese Red Cross if you're interested in helping out. We didn't want to just start the episode and let that pass by.
Yeah, the Lebanese Red Cross have an app at least on Apple App Store. I don't know if they have anything on Android. I recommend donating to them and not to any government organization in Lebanon, just because they're much more transparent with their donations.
Yeah, they do really good work on the ground, including ambulance work, healthcare work.
Yeah. So please go ahead and donate if you can. And without further ado, I guess this episode was requested by a listener and a friend of mine, Gurkarat, aka GCat, a friend of mine from university. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for the request, GCat.
Yeah, thanks for giving me nightmares and making sure I'm not going to open my mailbox for the next year and a half.
And GCat requested this via Instagram. So if you guys are interested, you can follow us on Instagram. It's at Das Criminal Pod to see photos, leave feedback, and you can request your own episode. We really do our best to take all of your feedback to heart.
Yeah, and I mean, this was a good recommendation. I never heard of it until this suggestion, so...
I had heard of it because of the BuzzFeed Unsolved episode on this case, but there's not a ton out there to work with in terms of primary sources. This episode is another creepy but not gory one. It's pretty low stakes in terms of harm done. We've been on somewhat of an eerie mystery kick lately, so feel free to get yourself a snack and make yourself cozy, but we definitely can't recommend listening to this if you're home alone. It's very spooky. Please prepare yourselves for the petty politics of suburbia.
Yeah. I've never seen such a group of bitter, resentful ghouls as I have reading this article.
It's just weird and creepy. Like the last couple ones we've done, including the Max Headroom bonus episode, have just been weird.
Yeah, I mean, the actual events are weird, but the reaction from the sort of neighbors in this rather wealthy town, like, you know that saying that common, I don't know if Mark Twain said it, but he's like, when fascism comes to America, it's going to come wearing the flag and on a cross or on a Bible or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm butchering the saying. But I would like to end it by saying when fascism comes to America, it's going to be with homeowner associations as the brown shirts.
This episode is super creepy, but a very sick part of me thinks it's funny because I think a middle-class white family being terrorized is hilarious.
First of all, they're not middle class. They're
rich.
Class.
Yeah, they're rich.
Yeah, they're rich. Yeah. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing Americans that middle class means affording a $1.3 million home.
Yeah, we should probably tell the story instead of talking about the story.
Yeah, okay,
so,
let's go.
Let's jump into it. In 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus purchased their dream home at 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. The 6-bedroom house was perfect for the couple and their 3 children, and was located in the same neighborhood where Maria grew up and had always wanted to raise her own family. Derek worked for an insurance company in Manhattan, a reasonable commute from the North Jersey home, and could finally afford the $1.3 million residence.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to comment that it's 2020 and that's really offensive. They should change their name to Womaness instead of Broaddus. No one calls women broads anymore. That's very Second of all, $1.3 million is a lot, and I do think that makes them wealthy. But then again, in Toronto, $1.3 million would get you the cupboard under the stairs that Harry Potter lived in.
Yeah, we should probably note, if you don't live in New York or know a lot about real estate in New York, and I mean New York City here, North Jersey and Long Island and southwestern Connecticut and Westchester County, they basically all serve as suburbs for New York City.
Yeah, I think this is a thing with a lot of North American cities in particular, where like suburbia is this sprawl, like you have the core, and then it's like a massive sprawl of suburbs that feed into the city, the workers, and everything.
Yeah, I grew up in a mixed suburb.
Yeah, I grew up in Bahrain, so I can't relate much. We don't exactly have suburbs.
Before the family moved in, they wanted to do a few renovations to make the home absolutely perfect. Derek went over to 657 Boulevard to do some painting, and while he was there, decided to check the mail. Inside, he found a white envelope with a handwritten note on the outside. The new owner. The envelope contained a typed letter, which read,
Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard. Allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched it in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You have children. I've seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the party begin.
The letter was signed in a cursive font, The Watcher.
Dun, dun, dun.
The Broadduses were understandably pretty freaked out by the letter. According to an article in The Cut, which we're going to cite a lot during this podcast episode, it also mentioned details like the family's Honda minivan. Somebody was definitely watching them. It seemed like someone in the neighborhood had some sort of obsession with 657 Boulevard. I didn't say it before because we try to keep our introductions more succinct and free of banter to build up the suspense, but 657 Boulevard, a boulevard is a type of street. It's like living at 87 Road or 421 Lane. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I got confused when I first saw the address, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was like, what boulevard? And then I looked it up on Google Maps and it's just 657 Boulevard.
You know you're living in a wealthy neighborhood when, like, they don't feel compelled to name things. Everything is like, the road, the boulevard, the store.
I live on the boulevard.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Watcher clearly had a hard-on for 657 Boulevard and had been spying on the Broadduses as they prepared to move in. After reading the letter, Derek ran inside the house, turned off the lights in case the Watcher was stalking him at that very moment, and called the police. An officer came to 657 Boulevard, looked at the letter, and then allegedly said to Derek, "What the fuck is this?" Which pretty much describes how we're all feeling right now. He asked Derek if he had any enemies, and Derek said he didn't. The Broadduses couldn't imagine why someone would send them such a threatening letter.
I'm sure we're going to get into this later, but it is hilarious how Derek's reaction is to immediately call the cops. And I understand that. That's understandable. But the result of that is this sausage-necked oaf showing up and asking, what the fuck is this? If we defund the police, who else can offer such poignant insight into this letter?
I don't know why I didn't write this story into our notes because it's super relevant, but as I said, I grew up in a mixed suburb and we lived on a corner lot. And teenagers in our neighborhood used to race their cars for some bizarre reason, and they would run over the corner of our lot because there were no curbs. You could just go from the road to the grass and then back onto the road. So my parents were understandably super annoyed by this, especially because we and all our little friends would play outside and they were like, someone's going to run our child over doing this. Now, normal people would call the police, but my mother is descended from the stock of the IRA, and no way in hell was she going to let anyone else handle this problem. So, my parents bought some wooden planks and some railroad spikes, and they put these wooden planks with the railroad spikes drilled through them in the track marks where these cars kept riding over the lawn, and they covered them up with leaves and grass. And the next time someone ran over our lawn, it popped all their tires.
Not even one tire, all of them, like Caltron.
3 out of 4, and the kid tried to ride away on his rims and ruined his car.
What an idiot.
So don't fuck with my parents is the lesson of this story. They will not call the police, they will get you themselves.
Also, I feel like we should keep that part in our Patreon episodes because we can, tempt our listeners. If you pay for Patreon, we'll give you how to do it yourself advice on, popping tires, blowing cars up, etc., etc.
We also became legends within this nice little suburb because everyone knew. They were like, are you those crazy people who put railroad spikes in your lawn?
Where do you even get railroad spikes from? Are they sold commercially?
Yeah, I think the hardware store.
Huh.
Knowing my parents, they went down to the abandoned railroad tracks and took them themselves. Going back to Derek and Maria Broaddus and 657 Boulevard, they decided to reach out to the couple who had sold them the house, John and Andrea Woods. Andrea said that the couple had, in fact, received a letter from the Watcher a few days before moving out of 657 Boulevard. But because they had never received any other mail like it, she thought it was probably just a weird prank and threw it away. The Broadduses thought perhaps someone who had also bid on 657 Boulevard but hadn't gotten the house might be sending the letters. But after speaking with the Woodses, this seemed unlikely. Only 2 other families had put offers on the house. One of these sadly had to withdraw after a bad medical diagnosis, and the other had found another home where they were happily living. The specific details about the Broaddus family, like the car they had, and the fact that they had 3 children, suggested that the Watcher was a neighbor of 657 Boulevard, someone who had eyes on the house. The police suggested that the Broadduses didn't tell any of their new neighbors about the letters, as all of them could be the Watcher.
I find it interesting that the Watcher himself or herself used a gender-neutral noun, because whoever writing these letters certainly wasn't letting anything slip. They could have called themselves, I don't know, the Hunter or Huntress or the Duke or Duchess or whatever. I don't know, something that's more gendered, but they chose Watcher, which is quite a vague term.
Also, they send really long notes, which I find interesting because people who examine ransom notes and things like that will tell you the more you write, the more details you're likely to let slip about yourself, so you should keep your ransom notes short and to the point.
Yeah, this guy is writing essays.
More criminal advice from our podcast.
Oh yeah, we're giving you do-it-yourself advice on popping tires, kidnapping people, ransom notes. I mean, this guy is like a Horatio Alger, these essays are quite the work of art.
2 weeks later, another letter arrived in the mailbox at 657 Boulevard.
Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus, welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time, they will. I am pleased to know your names now, and the name of the young blood you have brought me. You certainly say their names often. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all be on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher, and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on, and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching.
This letter also mentioned the Broadduses' 3 children by birth order and their nicknames. The writer also claimed to have seen one of the children painting on an easel inside the home's enclosed porch, eerily asking, quote, "Is she the artist in the family?" End quote.
Okay, first of all, surely that narrows down the suspect a lot because it has to be someone with both the visual access to the porch and the auditory access to hear the kids being called by their nicknames. The second of all, I wonder if did it strike anyone the idea of like using a bait and switch? So like having one of the kids or the dad or the mom sitting there doing an activity at some point in time and having someone else patrol the neighborhood to see if someone is watching, and then determining like if the watcher then mentions that activity in their next letter, figuring out who was present in the area and, you know, narrowing it down there.
Why not simply moon the Watcher?
Yeah, that's another advice from Das Criminal. If you're being stalked by a weird person, out-weird them. Fight fire with fire.
Just like pull your pants down and start screeching.
Yeah, like they send one of yours to the hospital, you send one of theirs to the morgue.
The Broadduses were horrified by this letter. They delayed moving into the house and stopped bringing their children around as somebody was clearly stalking them. A few weeks later, yet another note from the Watcher showed up in the mailbox. This one seemed perturbed that the Broadduses had been avoiding the house.
Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It is coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend, and now it is my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass, and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone. The house is crying from all the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard when I ran from room to room, imagining life with the rich occupants there. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father. But he kept watching until the day he died. and now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again.
The Watchers' letter scared them shitless, and only 6 months after purchasing 657 Boulevard, their dream home, the Broadduses decided to sell it and move somewhere else. They were staying with Maria's parents and slowly becoming unhinged over the stalking at 657 Boulevard. Despite the renovations the Broadduses had done on the house, nobody was biting. There were rumors going around the neighborhood: a stalker, a sexual predator, maybe a haunting. And people were reluctant to make such an offer on a house. The Broadduses were stuck paying taxes and a mortgage on a $1.3 million house that they were too afraid to live in.
Would you purchase a house if you were told of these letters, Erin? Because I certainly wouldn't.
I think if I had gotten the first letter, I would have thought it was a prank and thrown it away. I don't think I would have taken it that seriously.
No, but like if the Broadduses were selling the house and you were told of these letters as a buyer, would you still continue to purchase the house? Would you proceed?
Alone? No. But if I had a partner or roommate or something, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't either way. Like the way these letters are formed, like the way they're structured, I don't know. It seems like this person is very obsessed with this property, and I'd rather not test the waters.
The Broadduses decided to try their luck and file a legal complaint against the Woodses, the previous owners of the home, for not disclosing the threatening letter from the Watcher that they had received. In the United States, the only thing sellers are legally required to reveal about a property under federal law is lead paint.
What about asbestos?
Not asbestos. Capitalism says no.
Oh, fair enough.
Only lead paint. But after that, laws vary by state as to whether they must disclose other potential hazards like termite damage or flood zones. This probably goes without saying, but no state has a watcher clause that mandates sellers disclose information about obsessive house stalkers.
That's ironic because it wouldn't actually be too out of the ordinary if a state did. For example, New York State has laws that require disclosing if a house is haunted. I am not making this up, I swear to God. The article in the cut that we're using as a source quotes, "Some states use sellers to disclose transient social conditions like murders or possible hauntings. In a 1991 case involving an allegedly ghost-filled house, a New York court ruled that as a matter of law, the house is haunted." End quote. And I dug deeper into this case, and this case turns out to be Stambovsky versus Ackley in 1990. And according to Wikipedia, this case was a result of a dispute between the seller, Helen Ackley, and the buyer, Jeffrey Stambovsky. So Helen Ackley had lived in that house for some amount of years, and she was previously complaining of poltergeists haunting her house with letters to local newspapers. Specifically between 1977 and 1989, she sent 3 letters that detailed poltergeists doing poltergeist stuff, I suppose. I didn't really dig into that part. But then when she sold the house to Stambovsky in 1990, she failed to disclose this haunting to the buyer. And Stambovsky moved in, and then he heard the rumors of the haunting from the neighborhood. He ended up filing an action requesting the rescission of the contract sale and for damages for fraudulent misrepresentation by Ackley, end quote. And for all of those who are asking, rescission is when you ask for a contract to be considered null and void because you were misinformed or otherwise. Either you signed it out of coercion or misinformation or some other like biased background. The case made its way up to the Supreme Court of New York, which dismissed it. But then the appellate division, so the court that hears the appeals, of that same court received Stambovsky's appeal and ruled that for the purposes of the sale, the house was legally haunted, and ended up permitting the rescission. And I mean, for me, that opens up a whole other can of worms, because how do you determine if a house is legally haunted? Do you hire a priest? Do you have to perform an exorcism before the fucking sell? Do you sacrifice goats to the ancient god Baal?
Also, I don't believe in ghosts and hauntings, really. So if someone moved into my former property, not that I own any property to be selling, but if they did, and they said it's haunted, my response would be, no, it's not. I do not believe in that.
Yeah, neither do I. It's funny that the seller believes in it but didn't disclose it, and the buyer, I don't know if they actually believe in it or not, or whether they were just using this as a way to get out of a contract. But it's funny,
Right.
yeah, it's funny that the court was like, yep, it's actually haunted.
Yeah. If I could knock some money off my rent by claiming that my flat is haunted, I'd do it.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side of that, if I could earn a few extra dollars being like a local court's resident paranormal expert, like I'd happily go around checking if houses are haunted.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd definitely email my landlord and be like, the poltergeist, it's bothering me.
Yeah, it's moving plates and stuff.
So, at least in New Jersey, the Broadduses were really reaching with this legal complaint, and it ended up coming back to bite them. A local reporter found the complaint, and soon the story went viral. Something about the story of an unknown stalker terrorizing this suburban New Jersey family just really piqued the public's interest, and soon Boulevard was loaded with news trucks. Unsurprisingly, theories as to who or what the watcher might be sprouted up around the area. Reeves Weideman of The Cut writes, quote, "The range of proposed suspects included a jilted mistress, a spurned realtor, a local high schooler's creative writing project, guerrilla marketing for a horror movie, and, quote, mall goths having fun," end quote.
Is there an option for all of the above? Because
I hope it's the mall goths.
yeah, we're just very evolved monkeys that write notes to each other to scare each other.
Well, the story certainly riled people up. One commenter on the Cut article, for instance, writes, and this is a quote, "Whether written by man or God, the 10 Commandments are pretty basic. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Here is a perfect example of what such envy can drive one to. And it is disgusting. It is not funny." And then all caps, "Shame on you, watcher. Shame on you. If the feds don't get you, karma will."
Shame.
End quote.
Shame, just ringing the bell. Shame.
What a passionate internet comment.
Also very fanatical. Like we should hire this guy to like lead a crusade against this watcher.
In the meantime, the Broaddus family put up cameras, hired a private investigator, and even had the letters forensically examined to try and find some evidence of who the watcher might be. The letters were posted from northern New Jersey, the area of Westfield, but of course had no return address and couldn't be traced to anyone. The searching led nowhere. The watcher could not be found. We'll get into theories about the case and our thoughts a little bit later, but it's worth noting that the Broaddus' neighbors did not seem very sympathetic to their plight. Derek and Maria tried to sell the property to a developer who would tear down the house and split the lot into 2 smaller pieces, but each lot would be 3 feet shy of the requirement for a residence in Westfield, and the neighborhood planning board wouldn't allow an exception. The Broaddus family was stuck with the house.
So according to the same Cut article, the aforementioned neighborhood planning board, and like I said earlier, I feel like these boards and homeowner association types are basically the shock troops for fascism, or American fascism at least. They approved an exception for a development further down the same boulevard for houses that would also like be developed into new residences. And those developments fell further short of the requirement. Yeah, 70 feet in width. They fell shorter of that than 657, but were approved by the planning board.
Homeowners associations are actually, at least in the United States, founded in racism. They are a way to keep primarily Black families out of white neighborhoods, or at least they were once upon a time, and I'm sure still are in many ways.
Oh yeah, it's insane. Like, besides the origins of being completely racist and a way to like, maintain homogeneity in your neighborhood, it's like this bitter capitalistic death drive to like make sure your property values stay high by policing everyone's grass length. It's just psychotic.
And it's also, again, I don't own a home at all, but if I did, I would not own my home to have other people telling me that I can't park my own car in my driveway. It has to be in the garage or something like that. Fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, also, and this is just completely aside, grass is really not good for the environment. it is better if you have a lawn, it's better to have a mixed population of like local flowers and local like vegetation than just green grass, because that's how things like bees and butterflies end up proliferating. And the reason we have like, a severe crisis with the bee population is because everyone is, removing their flowers for like fucking green lawns that are just basically a desert for a lot of insects.
Right, and wasting water,
Yeah.
keeping those lawns green when we should be drinking it.
Yeah, or making like self-sustaining vegetable and fruit gardening, little garden, self-sustaining gardens.
I understand a homeowners association if you live in a condo building, for instance, and it has a pool and everyone has to contribute to the fees to like clean the pool and hire a lifeguard and that sort of thing. That I understand. But that's pretty much the extent of it. Telling people that they have to bring their garbage cans in within 10 minutes of the trash being picked up or something is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I think homeowner association type organizations, when it comes to condos, are interesting because they're different in a way that they act as a collective representation for the residents or the owners to the board. Because like a lot of these condo buildings, they have like, a developer owns the actual building, and the developer is responsible for, hiring concierge and lifeguards and so on and so forth. And because you're paying maintenance fees, condo maintenance fees, it's better to have a sort of organization that acts as a collective representation of the building.
Right. It's like a little government.
Yeah, it's a little union more. Yeah, it's a little union or a government. But these things end up, falling flat because owners who then rent to tenants, and the tenants have no voice even though they live in the building, and the owners are not living in the building, and so on and so forth.
So a lot of problems with homeowners associations. I'm going to call myself not a fan.
Yeah, neither do I.
So those homeowners who had opposed the plan to divide 657 Boulevard received some creepy letters of their own around the holidays that year. These handwritten notes had a threatening tone and were signed, Friends of the Broaddus family. Derek Broaddus himself later admitted to writing those letters, as he was frustrated with those neighbors' refusal to help the family rid themselves of the house by allowing a zoning exception. But Derek insists that he didn't write the letters from the Watcher. Still, it seems that some residents of Westfield aren't convinced.
It's really not covering himself with glory there, Derek. I mean, if you want to tell people that you didn't write the Watcher letters are not your doing, the last thing you should do is write similar letters.
Definitely not a smart move on his part. In 2016, 2 years after the Broaddus family purchased 657 Boulevard, but had never moved in, they managed to find someone to rent the property. Derek and Maria put a clause in the lease that said if another letter from the Watcher arrived, the renters could move out. 2 weeks later, the renters found another envelope in the mailbox.
To the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbors who has no idea who the Watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighborhood and mocked me. I watched as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions. 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher. Maybe a car accident. Maybe a fire. Maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but makes you feel sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. You are despised by the house, and the Watcher won.
I like how he uses the word wench. Like it's very old-timey, like, wench, come here, wench.
It escalates. Also, All hail the Watcher. In this town we call home, everyone hail to the Watcher song.
Oh, I was thinking of a completely different song. I was thinking Hail to the King, but it's Hail to the Watcher.
In July of 2019, 5 years after purchasing 657 Boulevard, the Broaddus family was finally able to sell the house for $959,000, about $350,000 less than the price they'd purchased it for. Because of the letters from the Watcher, they'd never lived in the house.
Oh, and that's without going into like property taxes and other bills that they paid on that house for the 5-year period they owned it, because that just sounds like a black hole of money.
Netflix won a bidding war for the rights to the Broadduses story and plan on making a film or series based on the saga of the Watcher, though details of the upcoming project, like its cast, have not yet been released.
Sorry, I'm just thinking of like a potential cast, and I think Anthony Hopkins would make a great Watcher.
There are a couple theories floating around about the identity of the Watcher. When they first started receiving the letters, Derek and Maria Broaddus started taking stock of their neighbors and trying to determine which of them might hold a grudge or just be a little bit odd. They center on one 657 Boulevard next-door neighbor, Michael Langford. Michael was in his 60s, and along with several of his siblings, lived with their elderly mother on Boulevard. One neighbor described him as a bit of a Boo Radley type, which set off alarm bells to Derek. But other than a bit of a weird vibe and the house's proximity to 657 Boulevard, making it easy to surveil, there was no evidence that Michael Langford had sent the letters.
Apparently, Michael was diagnosed with schizophrenia, according to his brother. So I just genuinely think that's really sad that being diagnosed becomes a cause for suspicion, especially since schizophrenics, from what I understand, are often more a danger to themselves than others.
Plus, DNA testing suggested that whoever had sent the letters, perhaps the person who licked the envelope, was a woman. So investigators started looking at Michael's sister, Abby, even going so far as to steal one of her water bottles from her job and test it against the DNA, but it wasn't a match.
Isn't that illegal?
Not if you throw something in the trash, no.
Okay.
But still, to be completely honest, like you said, Amr, I think it's really unfair to assume that adult children living with a parent are weird or creepy or would threaten their neighbors for some reason. Yes, it's an unusual and maybe undesirable living situation for a lot of us, but there are plenty of reasons adults live with their parents, like schizophrenia, as you noticed, or maybe just convenience or finances or taking care of someone who needs help.
Yeah, you could genuinely tell that the Broadduses are like wealthy boomers, because only they would assume that if someone is living in a home with their parents over the age of 18, they're like a creep or some sort of suspicious or questionable person.
Right. Also, not everyone who maybe lives in a circumstance that's considered weird to you is like a predator. It's actually pretty fucked up to assume that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
From there, people are pretty much divided into two camps: outside agitator and inside job. Were Derek or Maria Broaddus actually sending the Watcher's letters to themselves? Honestly, I'm torn. I'm the first to admit that when it comes to strange cases, I'm a very close-to-home theorist. Kids go missing, it's the parents. Adult murdered, it's the partner.
Or the child you forced to act disabled because of your Munchausen by proxy syndrome kills you, it's your child.
Yeah, arson attacks, keep an eye on the firefighters. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but statistically speaking, in these sorts of mysteries, it's often people close to the situation who are involved. So, why would the Broadduses do this? Some speculate that right after buying the house, they realized they were in over their heads financially and thought that by fabricating some sort of threat, they could get some money back from the Woods family or void the sale. And they did sue the Woodses, so that's a point.
Apparently, they also considered suing the Langfords, but didn't end up following through on that one after the cops ruled them out as suspects. To me, Derek does seem quite trigger-happy with civil lawsuits. Really, really strong upper bourgeois energy, in my opinion. And on a similar note, just to point out, do you know the difference between rich people and wealthy people?
No.
Rich people will ask to speak to your manager, Wealthy people will contact you through their lawyer to bring about the civil charges against you. That's the difference.
Oof. Yeah, all these lawsuits kind of suck. What happened to the good old days of putting railroad spikes in your lawn?
Be a go-getter. Do it yourself.
But it's not like Derek and Maria bought the house in 2007 and then the market crashed. They purchased it in 2014 and prices only went up from there. Plus, The Watcher seems like a pretty niche hoax to try and make a home sale look bad. Why not just fabricate something more common like flooding or mold? A more probable issue wouldn't draw as much suspicion and would therefore be a better option to fake instead of a stalker. Plus, overall, it seems as though the Broadduses spent more money on the house than they got out of it. If the idea was to use the Watcher as a means of extortion, it didn't work. Perhaps they've recuperated all those funds through the Netflix deal, but if that was the plan all along, these people are playing the long game. And there's no way they could have known this story would become as popular as it did. If Derek or Maria Broaddus were able to think in 2014, let's fabricate an elaborate stalking hoax using our own home and children as subjects, somehow make sure it draws national attention, and then sell the film rights to the story, that is genuinely incredible.
Yeah, and there were way too many unreliable or unpredictable factors for them to consider that as a plan. I also think it's important to keep in mind that the Broadduses received several offers for a movie deal, and when Lifetime released the movie without their consent, after them having rejected multiple offers, they sent the company a cease and desist letter. And it's actually hilarious that Lifetime responded to their cease and desist letter by arguing that, quote, the couple in this movie were biracial, and the letters were signed The Raven, end quote. So I guess that makes it different enough? I'm not sure, legally speaking.
First of all, if Derek and Maria Broaddus could think of this whole thing and how popular it would become, please come write for our podcast. Please make us huge. But who would you want to play you in a Lifetime movie about your life and times?
Well, Lifetime don't have a strong budget, so I don't know if they can hire any A-list actors. But if they can, definitely Rami Malek.
Yeah.
You?
Bella Hadid, no question. I don't know if she can act, and I really don't care. Yeah, but something that definitely does make me suspicious of the Broadduses is their letter writing campaign after the neighbors didn't allow the division of the lot. Maybe they were frustrated and inspired by The Watcher, but it still rings as something very strange.
Yeah, I agree that Derek sending letters signed with friends of the Broadduses is quite suspect, but he claims that he did it without his wife's knowledge, and I'm just confused, like, why? Like, just generally, over all of this, why? Like you say, if they were seeking to nullify the sale, there are way easier ways to do it. Just fake a mold fucking infestation or whatever. If they wanted a movie deal, there's way too many unpredictable factors to get to that point. And also, they received offers and declined them first. And they genuinely seemed invested in this house. They were doing renovation and they thought it was a dream home for them. So I don't see how the inside job theory is, I don't know, it's not logical to me. But again, people do weird things, so who am I to say?
American Horror Story Murder House, which is the American Horror Story season about the haunted house that this nice little family moves into, came out in 2011. So maybe they were inspired by that. Or any of the other haunted house stories where...
Yeah, like The Haunting on Hill House or whatever.
Right. Yeah. But it's still a weird thing to do.
Yeah, I don't know. People do weird things all the time. I just, like, why? It's such a nerd thing to do. So weird. And yeah, I mean, overall, this story, it's hard for me to sympathize with anyone in this story because small towns like this really freak me out. It seems like everyone who lives there is this, like, resentful, bitter, and rich narcissist who's more concerned about their property values and the well-being of their neighbors.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, I also find the class composition of these towns quite remarkable. Westfield, where this town is located, is apparently the 99th richest town in the US, And during the planning board meeting for the redevelopment of 657, dozens of residents marched up to oppose the Broaddus plan to split the house into two. And according to the Cut article, quote, after the lawyers, a parade of neighbors stood to speak. Glenn Dumont, from across the street, said the proposal, quote, would spell the end of the 600 block of Boulevard as we know it, end quote. A woman whose kids had been to the Broadduses' old home for a birthday party spoke on behalf of 9 neighbors and presented 657 Boulevard as Westfield's Alamo. Quote, our neighborhoods are constantly under attack from turf, lights, parking decks, you name it, end quote, she said. If we can't make a stand on Boulevard, where can we? At one point, Abby Langford stood up to say that she had spent almost 60 years looking at a magnificent, beautiful house, and didn't want to be looking at a driveway. End quote for the entire paragraph.
Okay, first of all, that does make me look at Abby a little bit more suspiciously. Spent almost 60 years looking at a magnificent, beautiful house. Like,
yeah, clearly.
So you have been watching the house. Yeah, but they did say her DNA that they stole didn't match. But yeah, this is, if these were tenants in a rent-controlled apartment and they started getting threatening letters, I'd be like, it's a landlord trying to get them to move out, case closed. Or if these were Black people moving into a primarily white neighborhood and they were getting letters like this, I would assume right away the cause is racism.
Oh, absolutely.
But none of that fits
here.
Yeah,
which is what boggles my mind. Just none of the regular explanations fit. And yeah, I don't know. This is just a horrifying town. It has a very Stephen King-esque vibe to it. Imagine being so wealthy, your idea of a neighborhood under attack is, quote, turfs, lights, parking decks, end quote. If gentrification is robbing working class families of like any ability to live in their homes and they're being pushed further and further out of their home cities, and neighborhoods and cities are under literal attack right now by federally approved paramilitaries, as in Portland, and you have ICE going around into cities and quite literally snatching people off the street and sending them to deportation camps. And these suburban housewives and hot tub dealership owners are considering parking decks to be a mortal threat. It's really disturbing. Also, I just want to clarify, that's not to say that I identify with the Broaddus family as well, because, I mean, I sympathize with their struggle, and I don't think anyone should go through what they went through, but it does sound like they're a millionaire family whose class position allows them the luxury of purchasing a 6-bedroom home, which few can afford. And Derek is also an insurance executive, and from my experience, insurance executives can do things with spreadsheets that would make Idi Amin red with envy. Overall, I don't think it's self-inflicted. I do suspect one of the neighbors, probably Abby Langford. I mean, her DNA didn't match, but that didn't mean she didn't write it. It just could be someone else who licked the envelope. And I don't know which. I don't suspect we'll ever find out. So that annoys the hell out of me because I'm really curious.
Yeah, something in my gut pushes me toward inside job. But like I said, maybe that's just a result of my own prejudices. But please let us know what you think and what you would do if you started receiving threatening letters like this.
Yeah, and if you do receive threatening letters, please let us know so we could cover you in one of our episodes.
Yeah, for sure. We just want to note, so I'm in the process of moving internationally right now, which has been made even more complicated by the pandemic. So the next few weeks will be a little personally hectic for me. So if an episode is a bit late or we have to miss a week, that's why. We don't want you to think that something is wrong. And we 100% plan on continuing the podcast after I've moved. So don't worry that we're going off the air. If you like our content, we do have a Patreon page. It is patreon.com/dascriminal. We have a mini episode coming out this week. We always leave the link to the Patreon in the description. So check it out if you're interested. And like we said earlier, you could find us on Instagram at dascriminalpod.
Yeah, and please rate us, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends. And if you really like our content, please write letters advertising our content to your neighbors in your neighborhood. Preferably signed anonymously, we're just saying.
All hail the watcher.
Yeah, I mean, no, in this case, you'd be called the listener or, you know, the fan or something like that.
Ooh, yeah. That's good. I like it.
Yeah.
We will see our lovely Patreon subscribers on Wednesday, and then rest of you we will see on Monday.
Adio, mon ami.
Bye.